Good morning and welcome to the Prime Minister's press conference with his cabinet ministers. I am Adelcia O'Connor-Falance, the press secretary to the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. At this point, I will ask everyone to stand, please, as we await the playing of our national anthem, which will be immediately followed by a prayer given by our Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley. Please stand.
Heavenly Father, we pause this morning to give you thanks and to give you praise because you continue to be good to us as a people and as a federation. This morning, as the Prime Minister and his cabinet are here in this press conference, we ask for your continued guidance and protection as we carry out our good governance agenda in the federation. We thank you for those who are gathered here and even those who will be asking their questions. We pray, dear God, that you will be with each and every one. We thank you for what you are doing. We thank you for what you are going to do. And we thank you for what you'll always do to us, because you promise that you'll be with us unto the end. Continue to cover this federation. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for that wonderful prayer. I would wish to thank the media houses for coming out today to be with us. We look forward to your questions. At this point, we'll call on the Prime Minister to give his opening statement. And let me first apologize as well for our late start. Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Terrance.
Good morning to all of our citizens, residents who are listening by radio, internet, or whatever means. I want to welcome you to this press conference and to say to you that we do not take your time for granted. We appreciate that you would spend it with us. These events to update our people are most critical. This government is at your service, and it is because of you why this administration is here. And therefore, it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we stay in constant communication with you so that you can have first-hand knowledge of what the government is doing, your government is doing, to ensure that we remain transparent and open to you, our people. And as we gather here for our monthly Prime Minister's press conference with the cabinet ministers, I stand before you with a profound sense of responsibility and determination. Our beloved nation of St. Kitts and Nevis faces its fair share of challenges, but I firmly believe that by coming together, hand in hand with the government, your government leading, we can overcome any obstacle that lies in our path, and of course, with God at our side. Before I delve into the pressing matters at hand, I want to emphasize the unwavering commitment of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration to lowering the cost of living for all of our citizens. in this post-COVID environment with inflation, and we see fuel prices rising, transport costs rising, we as a government, your government, we are taking it very seriously and doing what we have to do to lower the cost of living for you, our beloved citizens. We have taken significant measures to ease the burden and to make a positive impact on all of your daily lives. Today, I stand here to remind you of the transformative measures we have undertaken to alleviate the financial strain faced by our families here in the Federation. We have granted concessions on school supplies, and it is extended up to September 30th, 2023. And so as the new term begins, most likely in September, we want to ensure that families are in the best position to get what is needed for their children to go to school. This ensures that our children have the resources they need to thrive academically, and this, we think, would have a tremendous positive impact. And as we put that policy out, we are looking at even more ways in which we can work on it to make sure it continues to benefit our people even more. And so the feedback from our people, from your people, that feedback is critically important. Our commitment to your well-being does not end with just the concessions, as pointed out. We have taken decisions and decisive action to address the rising cost of food, recognizing the impact it has on every household. Shipping charges for food containers have been capped at the pre-COVID rates, and this is an effort to stabilize food prices and to give much needed relief to our people. In addition, we continue to monitor to see how the food prices would move and to be ready to make any other adjustments that are necessary to make sure that our people get the best price that we can have. But in speaking to food, our food security is critically important. And that is why the Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Samuel Duggins, is pushing for the 2025 agenda, and that is to decrease imports, food imports, from 25% by 2025. And so we are pushing that agenda, and the hope is we have more food for our people, more locally grown, and at a more affordable cost. Furthermore, we have also reduced the excise tax significantly so on gasoline, because transportation is critically important, and that would make it more affordable at the pump as well. So the government has taken a number of these critical measures to make sure that we deal with the cost of living in St. Kitts and Nevis. In our commitment to economic recovery, we have reduced corporate income tax and unincorporated business tax, as you know, one from 33% to 25%, and the latter from 4% to 2%. We want to foster a favorable environment for business and to facilitate growth and, of course, job creation. We are resolutely focused on reigniting economic growth and fostering a prosperous future for all of our people. And so our businesses are being supported in this significant way. And these are just a few of the examples of steps we have taken. But rest assured, we are actively exploring additional avenues to alleviate the cost of living and bring relief to each and every one of you on a daily basis. Yesterday, in collaboration with Senior Minister, the Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas, also we had officials from Customs and Excise Department, Consumer Affairs, representatives of major food suppliers here and traders here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we sought solutions to reduce the cost of food. This was the government. The government, of course, brought all stakeholders to the table, and in meaningful discussion, what are we going to do further to make sure that we control the cost of food for our people here and basic goods. The government remains resolute in finding the right measures that will benefit both the people and these businesses. We are in this together, and together we can control the areas within our reach. This is a responsive government. Additionally, our commitment to healthcare remains firm. Just 2 days ago, I visited the proposed site for a modern, state-of-the-art, climate-smart general hospital that will revolutionize healthcare delivery in our federation. Climate change poses unique challenges, and it is essential that we invest in a hospital capable of withstanding its adversities. Through cooperation between the governments of St. Kitts and Nevis and the Republic of China, Taiwan, this vision will become a reality. Remember, this was a major campaign commitment, and in less than a year, we are already on the way to deliver that hospital to our people. This will also open up opportunities for health tourism. We can serve the neighboring countries around us. And let me just add that in healthcare, we have made significant strides. And one of the things we are pushing for is for St. Kitts to become one of the safest places on earth to get pregnant and have a baby. We are pushing for that. We are on our way. It's a major accomplishment that we can have in just less than 1 year of having the government, this administration, putting the right policies in place. So apart from building a new structure, we want to deliver services that will benefit all of our people and put St. Kitts among the best in the world. As I mentioned, construction and developments, I wish to mention that the Robert Bratcher Museum is well on its way. I visited the site yesterday, and I'm already impressed by the progress thus far. My fellow cabinet colleagues will share more, of course, on the progress of your government and what your government has done thus far in the various other ministries. In terms of national security, we will very soon, on July 17th, resume police training, where we'll have at least 30 new recruits who will begin intense and focused training in the general duties of a police officer, self-defense, evidence and procedure, weapons training, among other key areas. And of course, we are upgrading the curricula to make sure that it responds to our national security needs. There's need for the security forces to continue to focus on the established pillars of policing, which include fostering a community and police relationship, intelligence-led policing, and predictive policing. To do this, manpower is necessary. In addition to the new recruits, the ministry is focused on improved collaborations with local, regional, and international security agencies, such as the Defense Force locally, the RSS, and as far as collaborating with the FBI. We are making significant strides in these areas thus far. And so I want to thank the Commissioner and the Commander and their, of course, staff for the excellent job that they have been doing. I want to also point out that Dr. Powell is here as a special advisor to national security, he has been working tremendously hard with our security forces and have been putting a number of initiatives in place to ensure that we continue to secure our nation, St. Kitts and Nevis. And so I'm very pleased to announce that a number of new initiatives are being put forward, a number of new areas are being established within our security forces, and we are already seeing the tremendous impact that is having. As I've said before, we will do all we have to do to make sure that security here in St. Kitts and Nevis is dealt with by methods that are sustainable and can, of course, withstand whatever challenges we might have. And we have started those significant things and are partnering. As I've said, we are also implementing our strategy of dealing with crime and violence from a public health perspective. I want to point out a number of critical areas where we're doing that. For example, the OASIS program, the Boys of Excellence Initiative, the Explorers, the Cadets. And not only that, we have brought the Scouts and we have brought a task force together to ensure the implementation of this. And we are the first in the CARICOM that I know who that we have gone further to establish the task force. And so we are very, very serious about our national security and to make sure we create a system that is long-lasting and effective. We are also looking to have more experts in our national security apparatus in addition to who we have presently. So I want to say that we are well on our way. So earlier this month, I want to say again, I met with high-level officials from the RSS, the United States of America, as well, where we met a number of their agencies, including the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement, Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, and the FBI, as mentioned before. And so we are tapping into resources to make sure that St. Kitts and Nevis is, of course, secured. I want to further state that in addition to this collaboration, we have now a new patrol boat here where training is taking place because our borders are a significant issue. We are also going to receive onshore radar in short order where we can detect any vessel that is coming into our waters here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And that will help tremendously with the transshipment of drugs and guns across our region, and that is reaching St. Kitts and Nevis, that are reaching St. Kitts and Nevis. Let me point out that these collaborative efforts are indeed critical. I recently traveled to Trinidad, where again, we had a presentation from the DEA as they are forming a vetting units. They are forming vetting units throughout the Caribbean. One will, of course, be with the OECS, where again, we will increase our capacity to deal with the new challenges. So I want to say that we are taking this matter seriously, making the necessary investments of resources, and that would have, of course, its positive impact, which we are seeing already. So your government is serious about, additionally, mending the many socioeconomic issues that we might have. And these initiatives are just a few that I have mentioned. And of course, the colleagues at the table, they will mention more. So my fellow citizens and residents, I stand before you not only as your Prime Minister, but as a fellow countryman who believes in the collective power of our actions. Our journey to a better nation requires the active participation of each one of you. Let us continue to work hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, to build a brighter future for ourselves and the generations yet unborn, because together we can shape the destiny of our beloved St. Kitts and Nevis. And so that is the way of my opening statement. And I know that the press is here and the press is eager, ready to ask what questions, whatever questions they may have. And so as I take my seat, I will now give the press the opportunity to ask myself or any member of the cabinet questions so that we can have an open discussion. And following that, we will have each member of the cabinet giving updates, significant updates, succinct updates with respect to what their various ministries are doing at this particular time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister Drew, for that statement and the introduction. At this point in time, we will open the floor to our media houses. But let me first recognize our ministers present. We have with us the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, the Minister of Education, Youth Empowerment, Social Development, Gender Affairs, Aging and Disabilities, Ecclesiastic and Faith-Based Affairs, Housing and Human Settlement. We also have with us Senior Minister, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Llewellyn-Douglas, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade, Industry, Commerce and Consumer Affairs, and Economic Development and Investment. We have our Attorney General, the Honorable Garth Wilkin, and the Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs. We also have Honorable Conris Maynard, Minister of Public Infrastructure, Energy and Utilities, Domestic Transport, Information, Communication and Technology, and Post. We have Minister Marsha Henderson, Honorable Marsha Henderson, Minister of Tourism, Civil Aviation, International Transport, Employment and Labor, and Urban Development, and Honorable Senator Dr. Joyel Clark, Minister of Sustainable Development, Environment and Climate Action and Constituency Empowerment. We have Minister Iseline Phillip, Honorable Iseline Phillip, who is currently off island, so she's not here with us today, and Honorable Minister Samuel Duggins, who is also currently working abroad. We welcome our media houses now to ask their questions. Please remember to state your names and the media houses that you represent. You're asked 2 questions at a time, and you actually direct your questions to our Prime Minister, who will then delegate accordingly.
Good morning, Reverend Thompson, ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation. What is being done to improve the water situation in Keon? Understood that there has been water issues for close to a week now, if not more. Also, regarding the upcoming EU-CELAC meeting, what is St. Kitts and Nevis's position going into that meeting?
All right, thank you very much for that question. I will, of course, answer part of it as the constituency rep for number 8 and allow the minister with responsibility for water services to the Honorable Congressman to respond as well. I would like to say that the issues of water in Keon has been going on for many years. This is not something new at all. And we know, and we have to be honest, that over the last 7 years, during the former administration, nothing at all was done to deal with the water issue in Keon. Not one thing was done. As we can remember, we had Bead Company here who was ready to drill. They had already started to drill in various areas. We know that they had done some drilling in Shadwell, and they had identified areas in Keon to drill. And when there was a change in administration in 2015, that was totally shut down and nothing at all was done. Since we came in, and the minister with responsibility will give more details on this one, we have done a number of significant things. One, we have sought to expand our water availability by purchasing water from Marriott so that they can make more water available. That's one. The second thing that we have done is that we have re-engaged BEAD. And presently, BEAD has done a lot of work thus far, even though that work is preparatory work. I can say, and the minister would update, that BEAD is back this week to continue that work, and he can give more information about drilling. But apart from that, we are going to solve the water problem. Means we're going to expand water availability, and we are going into desal. And that will have a tremendous impact on the people of Keon. I want to say the people of St. Peter's have much more relief now. But apart from that, we are going to put a storage plan in place where we are going to help residents who are affected most to get storage containers so that they can store water. We have sent out the water trucks. We have sent out the fire trucks where needs are so that people can have access to water. But I am happy to say that in less than a year, this government has put in place a significant number of policies that will resolve the water issue once and for all. I would not speak much more on it, except to say that the people of Keon will also enjoy a sustained, consistent availability of potable water as well. And so we're well on our way. Allow me to turn it over to the minister with responsibility for water services to give more details on the plans ahead. Honorable Maynard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, and thank you for the question. Firstly, I want to express that we understand the frustrations of persons around the country, in Keon and other areas, that are experiencing the water shortages. Unfortunately, for 2023, the situation has been compounded by the fact that we have had an extended drought, which means then by this time of the year last year, we have received 60% of that amount of water, meaning we are down 40% in rainfall. That is significant. So if we had 10 gallons before to share for 10 people, we only have 6 gallons now to share for the same 10 people. So nature is not on our side at the moment because, of course, of climate change. But I want to emphasize something the Prime Minister said. The question said, Keyon has been having water problems for the last week or so. I want to emphasize that this problem has been long-standing in Keyon for the 7.5 years previously to our administration. I know we always saying 7, but I want to stress 7.5 years before our administration. And not one iota of solution was offered for the people of Keyon. We are pleased to announce that the drillers are presently on the ground in Keyon, and they're doing the final remediation to the drilling rig that was left abandoned here by the last administration. There had to be extensive repairs made to that rig. It was vandalized, and we are hoping that this last iteration of improvement of that rig will allow for the drilling to continue, or rather to start, if not this week, hopefully by next week. All going well with the repairs that are presently happening this week, so the drillers are on board. That, once this well is successful, and I want to pause here, I remember I've said this before, once the well is successful, and someone in a comment somewhere said, but the gentleman doesn't know if the well is going to be successful. Well, no, you don't know. It is not 100% certainty. It is something we cannot see and touch until we drill down. So while the science points to what they call an anomaly, which is an anomaly in the structure of the earth where a cavity of water can exist, while we can see and anticipate that there might be a lot of water there, we still have to drill to find it and make sure that it is potable water. So if all goes well with the drilling, we hope to get up close to 500,000 gallons of water a day. That will solve the water issue in Keyon. But it will also help in areas such as St. Peter's, because if we are able to find anywhere close to 500,000, even if it's about 300,000 gallons a day, presently, the water for Keyon and the water from St. Peter's largely come from the same source. And so that source is split between St. Peter's and Keyon, and I think some others as well. By eliminating the need for Keyon to use that surface water source from the Green Tree area, we will be able to divert all of that water, or most of that water, or more of that water to the St. Peter's area. So the well in Keyon has multiple effects across the areas that are affected by the drought and the lack of water. So we are hoping that this will bring significant relief. And this process started many, many months ago. The first meeting, official meeting I had as a minister was to re-engage BEAD to fulfill their responsibilities to drill the outstanding wells. When they're finished with Keyon, we will then move to Shadwell, where there's another opportunity to correct a well that was there. Similarly, there was an anomaly found. When you drill, though, you found that there were some issues with the particular well when they did. So it could not be used. But there are ways that it could be remedied. And so that is the next step. This will also be a great help for not only the Shadwell area and Basta area, but also that is an area from which we can send water to St. Peter's area as well. So in a very short few weeks and couple months, we should be able to deal significantly with the water situation in St. Peter's and in Keyon. Additionally, since I am on the floor with water, and just to expand in case there are other questions, we are presently working with the Royal Utilities to expand their present supply of water to the Frigate Bay area. At present, they are producing maybe about 150,000 gallons a day to add to our system. We are presently constructing a facility that will allow that to go up to 400,000 gallons a day for the Frigate Bay area. Again, similarly, once we are able to increase the water supply in the Frigate Bay area to the Southeast Peninsula and Frigate Bay proper, then we will not have to use water which we take from the Bastia Valley to go to Frigate Bay, and we can send that to our storage facility, for instance, in Mon Peak to serve other areas of Bastia. So there is a detailed plan of how we're going to resolve the water situation. We are building the foundation now, and I appreciate that foundations are never sexy. They never look good, they're never appealing, but they are critically important to hold up what you're deciding to build. Quite frankly, the other administration did not build a foundation. And so when pressure came to bear, the whole administration crumbled. That will not happen with this one. We will diligently go about what we need to do so that when we implement the decisions we have made, they are long-standing, not for 2 or 3 years, but for 20, 30, and 40 years. So we are well on our way to dealing with the water issue. Very shortly, we will have an update on the desalination efforts of this government. It is presently being evaluated. And again, if that is correct, we will have at least another 2 million gallons of water being added to our system within the next 6 to 8 months or thereabout, all going well. So the plans are in place. Water will not be an issue in a short period of time. But we must stress that we had to do the diligent work of building sound foundation to achieve our water goals. And one other thing, we are also not just being reactive to the present situation, we're being forward-thinking. And our department is now going to be engaging in identifying all of the other possible well sites around the entire island of St. Kitts. So we're going to identify where anomalies exist, where there are pools of water that exist on the ground, so that we can know exactly where we need to drill, so that we explore all our possibilities with groundwater. Because it is cheaper to do groundwater than it is to do desalinated water. So all of these plans are afoot so that we can mitigate against the travails or the issues of climate change. It's a very difficult challenge, and we could not have anticipated, for instance, that we would have been in such an extended drought at this time. So please bear with the process for just a little longer. We understand the frustrations. We understand that it will take, it is a bit much to limit the amount of water that is there, but we are trying as best as possible to share what we have in a responsible way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Maynard. And so I want to re-emphasize that the people of St. Peter's, Keyon constituency number 8, which is hit hard, that solutions are on the way. Permanent solutions, once and for all, deal with this issue. You asked also about the EU-CELAC Summit, which is coming very shortly, and we are traveling to Europe. It's a significant meeting on the 17th and 18th of July between the European Union and CELAC, which, of course, is the community of Latin America and Caribbean states. And so I will ask the Foreign Minister to speak to that summit that is coming up as we are about to travel.
Let me
1 second. Like,
Is it on now?
Yes.
Right. Right. Good morning as well to the press. And I want to thank Prime Minister for giving me this opportunity to respond to that question with regard to the issues that will be pursued in the upcoming summit of heads of government of the European Union and CELAC, that is the community of states of the Latin America and Caribbean. This is going to be the first summit since we've had the pandemic and the number of issues that have confronted us, issues like climate change. And so the CELAC, which met in Argentina in January of this year, when the leadership was handed over to Prime Minister Gonzalez of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and this being the first time that the headship of CELAC would have been handed over to a Caribbean leader since it was created back in, I think, 2013 or 2014. And the critical issues for us, with some of which are still being debated and ironed out to appear in the final document, was firstly for our region concern, the matter of reparation as a demand that has been pursued by the Caribbean community in recent times for the act of slavery committed against people of African descent and who were sent into the Caribbean and into other parts of the world. This is an area still of controversy because, of course, others do not wish this matter to be finally entered into the final document. Also, I should say, correlated to this is the matter of the Atlantic slave trade, that there are some views that this should not be appearing in the final document, especially since this is a matter that is being pursued at the moment by the United Nations. And similarly, there are views that the matter of identifying the main causative agent, I would say, for the war in Ukraine that is being pursued by Russia, that this also should not be a matter to appear in the final document. I made mention of these matters in particular because they impact directly on St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of the unsettled view that would emerge from this particular summit. But there are other views that we've had a common understanding about. For example, the effects of climate change and the need for the developed world to lend support to financing of the initiatives that are associated with climate change and the effects it is having on countries like ours in the Caribbean region and in Latin America on a whole. You would remember that it was just a few weeks ago, there was a very important summit in Paris, which I had the opportunity to attend for a few hours on behalf of our Prime Minister, who was somewhere else at that time. That summit, I think, has piqued the interest of all persons. And President of France, the President of France, Macron of France, was very, very careful in pursuing aggressively the attention of the world to do something that would allow countries like ours to have the benefit of additional financing and lessen the debt burden, which to a large extent is what our our money is being used for in terms of paying down debts. A lot of those debts being incurred as a result of the rebuilding of infrastructure after we would have been impacted by climate change. And so the world is becoming more conscious of this. The developed world is becoming more sensitive. And I believe that this will be part of the final statement that comes out from the summit. In other words, all that we have been saying with regard to the impact of climate change upon us and the need for the developed world and the multinational development banks and national banks of the developed countries to come to terms with our plight. That is, those of us who are small, independent countries. We believe that if we were to be able to access financing at a different rate, or if we are able to access financing as grants and gifts rather than having to borrow at high interest rates, we would see a difference in terms of the livelihoods of our people in this part of the world. In other words, we need to ensure that even though we are a high income country, we would still have access to these financing, which are reasonable because we are states which are small and quite vulnerable to all of the vagaries, I should say, of climate change.
Thank you very, very much, Minister of Foreign Affairs. We will take more questions.
Sure. Welcome the next media house.
Good morning to all at the head table. Glenn Bart, SK Newsline. Mr. Prime Minister, at a previous press conference, I had inquired about several tourism-oriented accommodations that have been left almost abandoned, incomplete. And it was my understanding then that government was going to approach the developers and see if they can get these things restarted. Can you talk about what specifics have occurred since then? In a similar fashion, two major projects funded by that received funds from the SIDF, namely Kitchen Hill and Christopher Harbour. These two projects have major potential, yet they seem to be languishing. I've also asked about this in previous press conferences. Is government in a position to do anything to stimulate these two projects in terms of any kind of arrangements with the developers? And if you can also comment on what is really happening at Kitchen Hill in terms of the management, who is managing it, how functional is that operation? And connected to the Kitchen Hill situation, under then Prime Minister Dr. Denzel Douglas, the Whitegate Development Program started. What is the status of that development program now?
All right. Thank you very much, Glenn, Mr. Bat. There are a number of critical things that you asked with respect to two major developments. I would allow the Minister of Development to touch on them, and namely the Christopher Harbour matter and the Kitchen Hill. And also you spoke to some projects that are still not completed on the CBI program. And so would allow the Minister of Development to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, and thank you, Mr. Bart, for your questions. The question pertaining to Christopher Harbour. Christopher Harbour continues under this administration to be an area designated and pursued for high-level tourism development. You would recall that the basic policy and strategic planning of the Labour administration that I had to lead was that we would have development, economic development being spurred from two different points in the country. In Southeast Peninsula, which is where Christopher Harbour is located, and down in the Capistree region, where the White Gate Development Corporation was created to spur on development in that area after the closure of the sugar industry. And Kittishan Hill was one of those development that was expecting to have 3 different resort hotels developed there, and thus lead the development of the country, mainly in tourism, from these 2 different points, counterposed to each other. The northwest of the island and the southeast of the island, the Southeast Peninsula. The Christopher Harbour is the main development thrust that is taking place in the Southeast Peninsula. Of course, they've been able to attract boutique hotels like the Park Hyatt, which is there and functional. We also had operations like the Salt Lodge, which was a very, very successful and attractive restaurant and so forth side. Together, of course, with the Pavilion, which was the anchor facility that provided the necessary support services for the residents who would have built multi-million-dollar homes in the Southeast Peninsula at Christopher Harbour. The development is still ongoing, but it has been slowed, in particular by COVID-19. There are some other issues that have to be ironed out. I think the developer which is Buddy Darby and his family members, they are looking for a major investor to do a number of things. Complete the establishment of the marina. The marina has been built, but it is not receiving enough support that was anticipated. The completion of a golf course, which also was started, marked out by an international golfing star. But again, that has not been completed. Of course, there are some challenges with regard to financing of these operations. Because having been closed for over a year, naturally, financing has become a problem. And so there are some service or infrastructural service issues that have arisen, especially for the residents who are living there. The idea, therefore, is for us to aggressively market the development that is taking place at Christopher Harbour together with the developers themselves. That has been continued. I've had several meetings abroad with potential investors showcasing the Christopher Harbour. People have come, people have looked, and have expressed interest. I'm also in contact with Buddy Darby, the main player that is pursuing the development there. I believe that others who are part of this effort to bring development to Christopher Harbour, these other persons, I believe, are doing the same in terms of attracting new investors and settling some of the outstanding financial issues that exist there. With regard very quickly to Kittishan Hill, as I said, Kittishan Hill is one of the developments that started down at the White Gate development area. Just as we had the Christopher Harbour and the Southeast Peninsula, so we had about 3 square miles of land, mainly agricultural land, inclusive of the villages that exist there. These lands were being allowed for development of a mixed type, agricultural, which would always provide a greening of the area, and at the same time lending to tourism development with hotels and spurring on the employment opportunities that we expected to accrue there. Remember, we had the Beaumont Park, which was a very successful operation. That, of course, went down because I suspect that there were issues there. But now we are trying to have that race course turned into a race course of a different type, not just horses, thoroughbred horses anymore, but possibly motor cars and motorbikes, etc. These are still in the making. We have the ongoing project of Ramada, which again is an important project in the Whitegate development area that has been built, that is in operation, and there's a phase 2 to that development, which will see another major international hotel built in the 15 acres of land next to the Ramada. Then we go over to what is happening presently in Kitishan Hill. You have the experience of the greening of the area with the Kitishan Hill project associated with Arthur's restaurant on the beach in Leapway, which gives you the beach experience. These are ongoing. The Kitishan Hill has run into a number of problems. You would remember that these problems, a lot of which were pursued by the administration before us, because there was this notion that people who had stolen money spent large sums of money investigating, and up to now, no one, that is the public, has not been informed that nothing was found of that nature that was being accused. But the Kitishan Hill is an area that, again, I've concentrated upon. My ministry I lead has concentrated upon bringing investors into that area. And so far, we've had 3 interested parties. One is a group that leads the ownership and management of high-end hotel development. That is out of Miami, the owners of very many Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Ritz-Carlton Hotels, and other upscale boutique hotels have shown an interest in working with us with regard to Kitishan Hill. As I said, 3 hotels were anticipated there. 1 was almost completed. That is Belmont Farm. There were 2 others. There are issues because the development really is owned by investors in our citizenship program. They have not had the benefit of enjoying what they would have invested in and paid for. That is cottages and villas and so forth, some of which are still unbuilt. But because of the arrangements that were made when the area was marketed for development, there are some major legal issues that now have to be resolved in moving forward with the development. It continues to be the iconic development, tourism development of the region, no matter from which country you would have come, far or near. People are still in awe with what we are doing at Kitishan Hill, at Whitegate, as part of this new administration's aim to progress tourism in St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Douglas. We open the floor once again for the next media house.
Good morning, Kevon Brown, WinFM.
Morning.
On the topic of national security, what success has there been in addressing the symptoms and root causes of crime in the Federation? And additionally, what has been the impact of increased police presence in the communities, as well as Operation Reassurance? And additionally, since the rebranding of the Alternative Pathways program to Elevate, what has been the reception of that program thus far? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let me answer that one as it deals with national security. I would say that there are a number of initiatives that have been put forward thus far. I think in operationally and training wise, there have been some significant changes in terms of creating the operation reassurance, but within that, a number of other things that would have been done in terms of how does the police organization really respond to what is happening. One, we have had much more and better collaboration between police and the defense force, which have seen an increased presence of the security forces throughout the communities. That's one. Secondly, in terms of engagement, in terms of the groups that we have here that are engaging in these type of criminal activities, that engagement has been very well active. Secondly, in terms of training, significant training has also been taking place to respond to what has taken place thus far in terms of how your organization responds to these. We have been dealing with the city TV issue, for example. We are expanding that in the process and we are upgrading that to make sure that we can expand the visibility. Secondly, we are reintroducing the K9 unit. So we have started to rebuild that as well. We are introducing another unit which should be built out very, very soon, which I will speak to as I am given the authority to say, so to speak, or as to what that unit will entail. And so we have put those things in place. Those things, among others that we have done, that all I would speak to because of the nature of things, those things have resulted in positive results. Secondly, with respect to dealing with crime from a public health perspective, we have already put the task force in place. Just yesterday, I met with the PS for social services, and we are going to introduce programs where the issue of national security and dealing with violence would permeate almost every sector of our country because we have to deal with it holistically. We have decided to accept the OASIS program, which is a program that was launched between USAID and the OECS to deal with at-risk youths who are in trouble with the law. That is one of them. We have decided to expand the cadets, the scouts, the explorers, and so forth, so that we can have diversion opportunities for our young people. We have also gone as far as this summer, where the police is putting on a major football camp, and part of that would be also to deal with the issue of crime and violence. And we're also doing that with our summer fire and rescue program. So we are dealing with it from a number of perspectives. One, how do we respond aggressively to what was happening? Are we making the necessary changes? And in addition to that, we have brought experts on the ground, persons who are well versed in the area. We have Dr. Powell, who is now embedded in the security forces, and we are now going to bring in another expert to deal with that as we restructure and reorganize our security forces. We have also said that we are going to restart police training, which will start on July 17th. And that would increase, of course, the manpower, and they would be given the necessary training to deal with any situation that we are dealing with when it comes to national security. We are going to start again to ensure that we complete the police training complex, center, I might call it, next, right here. It's right over here. As you know, that was abandoned. We are going to complete that so that training becomes something that is constant. In addition to all of that, we have made sure that we are going to open up our police stations that were closed. One in Deep Bay that is undergoing presently renovations. That was closed. And the one in St. Paul's that we're also going to reopen to make sure that, that police station was shut down and abandoned by the last administration, leaving St. Paul's without coverage and areas. We are going to make sure. So as you know, Deep Bay, as you know, there were issues with the building which we are taking care of. So that area has to be properly covered as far as St. Paul's. And we are doing work also in Nevis with the Charlestown police station. So we are upgrading the police station, upgrading the presence, upgrading training new approaches that we are introducing. And in addition to all of that, we are collaborating regionally and internationally as well. As I told you, we are collaborating closer with the RSS, and we have gone as far as collaboration with the FBI, DEA, and so forth, INL. So we are bringing all those resources to bear on the national security issue of St. Kitts and Nevis. Citizen security is a concept that we have to understand, and we have to ensure that citizen security takes root in St. Kitts and Nevis. We know what took place under the last administration with the program that they call Peace. We know how corrupt that was. We know that the issues that would have led to, and never again, especially under this administration, we will not create a program like that. And that is why it was important that we transition from that to what we call Elevate. And under that program, it will be transparent, open, sustainable, using evidence-based methods to deal with the issue. And we have made the necessary investments, and we'll continue to make the necessary investments so that St. Kitts, when it comes to what we call citizen security, it is a concept that I would like us to adopt. Citizen security, that would be our number one priority. And remember that we have to make sure that all is on board. So the media has a role to play. I would like to see the media put out a lot of anti-violence message for, wholesome living and so forth. You can put out your own ads. Encourage citizens to do the right thing. Give them methods of how to deal with issues of violence and anger and so forth. You can help us and help the society in dealing with this scourge as well. Let me say, this is not just a St. Kitts problem. It is a Caribbean problem, and that is why we are dealing with it from even a regional standpoint to ensure that we pool our resources so that we can make sure that the issue of security within the region, citizen security within the region, holds, and it would serve our people well. So we are doing a lot from all perspectives. We are dealing with this from a holistic standpoint. And of course, we are seeing benefits already in this approach.
Thank you, Prime Minister Drew. Our next media house, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ralston Rankin, Sugar City FM. In light of the fact that government auxiliary employees can now get gratuity payment, can the years worked as a full-time government worker be added to the years worked as an auxiliary worker when calculating an overall gratuity compensation for such a worker? That's my first question. Next question. When concessions are offered on school supplies, how can the government ascertain that the tax break is passed on to the parents of the school children? For the supermarkets got concessions, and up to now, not one penny has passed on to the ultimate consumer. And also, can we get an update as to the minimum wage? Thank you.
All right, thank you once again. I think that is down my alley. When it comes to the gratuitous payment, I want to say to the people again and reinforce, because right here we brought our workers, our hard working people who are the GAE. They came here and we reinstituted the cabinet. It was brought to the cabinet deliberated, and together we decided that we had to reintroduce the gratuitous calculation that had been previously established, meaning that the GAE workers will see a brighter day when they get their gratuity. For example, we had people who got only $8,000, $9,000, and when you recalculate their money, they got an extra, sometimes $20,000, an extra $25,000, and we gave them their checks right in here. And it was the last administration in 2021 who shifted the policy. And so persons who might have retired a year earlier got a certain amount, but if you retired after that, you got a significant reduction in the amount you received, which would in some cases be a third of what you would have previously received. And so we reversed that. So every GAE worker in St. Kitts and Nevis is now going to receive their gratuity based on a calculation that was predating 2021. And that is a significant difference as a result. And therefore, want to say that that our GAE workers are very pleased with that. The other one that you asked, so the other thing we are looking at is the pension, of course. We have put a task force together. The task force met just this week. Today is Thursday, and the task force, I think, met on Tuesday. And I had an update this morning from our accountant general, Mr. Bratcher, who gave me an update on the discussions with respect to pensions for GAE workers. And I'm happy with their work, and we will have an announcement as to what we will do when it comes to pension. Our GAE workers went home, under the previous Labour administration, the process had started. Once the government changed in 2015, is that everything was thrown out. Nothing was done for the GAE workers. As a matter of fact, their policies hurt the GAE workers more because they took away the significant part of their gratuity. We have reinstated that, as I said, and now we have restarted the discussion on the pension for GAE workers. So I'm pleased to announce that the task force has been doing significant work. The other one,
School supplies concession.
right? So the school supplies concession, I would say we have implemented it just past few days, and so once people start buying later on, just short order, a couple of weeks, they will see the difference in prices. And we have spoken to customs. We have also brought a task force together. The task force is to deal with the cost of living. And just yesterday, that is headed by the CAPSEC, Dr. Natter. And just yesterday, they had a meeting and I was able to speak to the task force. And the task force discussed a number of things to deal with the cost of living. Of course, the concessions are an important part of that. Customs is already in place and ready to put things in place to make sure that the savings are passed on to the parents and guardians and so forth. So that is in train. That doesn't happen overnight, but in quick order, in a couple of weeks, we will start to see that. And so what we have said to Consumer Affairs as well, and Consumer Affairs is up to it, is they are going to monitor prices. And I want our people to monitor prices as well, and also to report to Consumer Affairs when you think that the price is out of range. We need that surveillance as well. We need to hear from you. Consumer Affairs is willing to hear from you so that we can properly surveil. But I would say thus far, our traders and importers and so forth and business owners are on board because this is not anything that would affect them negatively. As a matter of fact, it might impact them positively because more people might buy more things as the prices would go down. So we will see that. So that is one of the things that we are significantly dealing with when it comes to the concession. So we are going to see that. And that goes up to September 30th. By that time, we suspect everybody would have bought the stuff that they need for their children.
An update on minimum wage.
The update on the minimum wage, I would like to say that in Cabinet, we had a significant discussion on the minimum wage. But what I would do is allow the Minister of Labour, who is leading on this, to update the country at this particular time. Oh, okay. So she wants me to speak to it. So as you know, the minimum wage task force was put together, and it was being led, of course, by the Ministry of Labour, where you would have brought all of the stakeholders to the table, means government, business, chamber, and so forth, union, workers' organizations, to discuss the issue of the minimum. Why is it important? It has been about a decade, and the minimum wage in St. Kitts and Nevis has not changed. So as we call ourselves a high-income country by the calculation of GDP and so forth, the minimum wage in St. Kitts and Nevis has not changed, which means that the economic power of our people are somewhat limited as a result of that. Of course, we encourage businesses as much as possible to pay above the minimum wage, pay above the minimum wage. And so they have met, and the discussions have been going on. We have different position papers because we have included many different ministries, organizations, and so forth, so that they can put the position papers forward as to what would be a reasonable. So we have heard, for example, from the central bank, we have heard from the Ministry of Finance, we have heard from the Chamber, we have heard from the Labor Union, and we have heard from, for example, the Labor Department, we have heard from Social Services, Consumer Affairs, and so forth. So, and Social Security. So we have had position papers from these stakeholder organizations, ministries, or whatever they might be. And so we have reached the conclusion that there needs to be an increase in the minimum wage, because we have said there has to be an increase in the minimum wage based on where we are, and everyone has agreed. What we are discussing is how much at this present moment the minimum wage would be. That is what we are discussing presently. And of course, we want to make sure that our people get the best deal that can be had at this particular time. And so we are going through that. So I can say a general decision has been made that there will be an increase in the minimum wage. We are now discussing the details in terms of how much that would be and exactly when that will be implemented, but it would not be implemented past this year. That decision has also been made. So that is coming for our people. There are, of course, positions saying to us that because it is post-COVID and we want to increase the minimum wage, the economy is still in a state of recovery. So this might have to be done. This is one position, for example. We might have to do it in stages to get to the number that we want to get. That is one position as the economy recovers. As I've said before, our economy was recovering the slowest, especially when it came to the tourism sector, or when it comes to the tourism sector, because we refused to open the country when it should have been open. As you know, we opened it. We opened the country. Yes. They refused to open it, but we opened the country. Sorry, we opened the country. They refused to open the country, and we opened the country. And that was the first decision on August 17th when we opened the country. And that hampered the growth of tourism, the recovery of tourism here in St. Kitts. We were last. I'm waiting for the next figures. We were last in the OECD in terms of recovery because of the political decision made by the last administration to keep the country locked down unnecessarily. And that has hampered growth. And therefore, our recovery is slower than it should have been had the country been opened up months earlier. And therefore, we are working through that. Notwithstanding that we have a slower recovery because of that decision, notwithstanding that it is post-COVID, we are still fighting to get the best opportunity for our people when it comes to the minimum wage. We have also decided that the minimum wage must be looked at every 2 to 3 years and a report be given, tabled in the parliament, and our people have access to it. We will not wait for years to pass, almost a decade, without updating the minimum wage or at least communicating with our people with respect to the minimum wage. That will not happen again. That has hurt our people, and we will abandon that bad practice that was undertaken by the previous administration. And so these are the factors surrounding it. We are making measures to make life better for our people. The concessions and school things, the fact that we are tempering freight for the importation of the 20-foot and 40-foot containers with food. We are further looking at any other measure that must be taken to lower the cost of food here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So the people must know that we will do what we have to do to make their lives better. Let me say that we are spending about $250 million on social support. $250 million on social support. I'm talking about the PAP, the STEP, Elevate, and all the other social programs, such as the uniform program, the SELF program, the food voucher program, subsidizing preschools, the electricity. All of that we are doing for our people. And we just touch gasoline, as you know, but we don't want the prices to go up and affect people's ability to move around. And so we have taken that $250 million, which is around 25% of the present budget, to deal with the cost of living. I want that number to sink in. We are open and transparent, $250 million. And with all of that, we are sending our students to school free, to college free. With all of that, we have started a fund so that children who are sick with terminal congenital illnesses can be saved. When I say terminal, I mean if you don't intervene, they will die. And a number of children have benefited. As a matter of fact, because of that program, those children who would have died previously are alive today. A number of them. And because of that, St. Kitts and Nevis will have one of the lowest infant mortality rates in the world. And I still believe we can have the best in the world. Because of a program like the high risk, where we intervene for social support to mothers who are high risk when they are pregnant, we have a high risk clinic now at JNF. And as a result of that, we have not seen any maternal deaths for the year. And I'm saying that the Ministry of Health of St. Kitts and Nevis can really reach the goal of having 0 pregnant women die this year. I don't know if any other country, independent country in the world would achieve it, but we can achieve that. That is social support. The other social support we're doing is to the dialysis unit. Nobody is turned back. The other thing we want to introduce is renal transplant, because a lot of young people now have renal failure, and we want them to have access to that. That is another program that would have some social support. So I want to say to our people that this government is responding and working hard. Are there challenges? Yes. It will not be perfect. But are we up to it and fighting as much as possible to give our people the best life here in St. Kitts and Nevis? Yes, we are. We'll continue to fight hard, collaborate with the people, look for more policies, better policies, improve policies to ease the burden of our people here. But I can say this, in short order, we will not have water problems. In short order, we will improve our agricultural production. In short order, we'll have better infrastructure, better housing, school access. And the ministers will update you, but I'll leave my answer there. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We will allow for 2 more media houses if you have any additional questions.
There's a question of severance. Some persons, I'm told, have not received their severance pay after being laid off for not accepting the COVID vaccine, and are wondering when they will receive that, specifically UMHS. And is the Office of the AG contemplating laws for AI in relation to ownership of copyright and creatives in St. Kitts and Nevis? We see that it's doing a number internationally. So is that on the radar to protect our people?
Right. Thank you very much. I'll let the AG answer. Go ahead, AG.
Good morning, everyone. The simple answer is yes. I'm actually happy that you asked that question, because the Intellectual Property Office, which falls under the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs, has just recently announced that the World Intellectual Property Organization is hosting its Caribbean meeting of all the IPO offices throughout the Caribbean in St. Kitts in November. And on the agenda for that meeting will be the IP's response to AI. So at that meeting, I recommend that you attend, because it's going to be a very interesting discussion. It is a evolving area, particularly with respect to copyright, because you have a smart computer developing art, developing music. I saw recently that an AI computer it examined all the music from Drake, the artist, and another artist, and actually created a whole new song. And then the question comes about who has the copyright to that song created by a computer, not created by an individual. So it's a very intriguing concept. I hope that King Congress is not subjected to potentially a Byron Messiah and King Congress AI-generated song. Mm-hmm. And So it's an ever-evolving area, and it is on our radar. We are also discussing some changes to the IP laws, and I don't want to do that until we have a sort of preliminary solution to the AI issue. So the short answer is yes, it's on our radar, and the long answer is that we hope to discuss that fully during our November meeting of intellectual property offices for the Caribbean region.
And as it relates to the question for severance for the employees at UMHS, several complaints were made and lodged at the Ministry of Labor and Employment. Those were compiled and submitted to the Cabinet as well, which I think we deliberated on about 2 Mondays ago, and they were approved. So if it is, formal complaint was made or the formal application was made at the Ministry of Labor and Employment, and your name was submitted there, then you should be receiving your severance, because I know the Cabinet deliberated on that and approved a number of persons from that institution.
Thank you, Minister Henderson. We ask for our final media house.
Mr. Prime Minister, the next tourism season is fast approaching, and the situation at the airport, the aircraft parking apron, can you provide a status update on that? If it is the case that we will be unable to have it repaired in time for the next tourism season, is there any fallout in relation to the category level of the airport as assigned by the United States Federal Aviation Authority? Secondly, with regards to air services to the USVI, I think there are some persons who are a bit concerned about getting back and forth much easier. Is there anything on the horizon with regards to air services into the USVI? And turn to the K9 unit that you mentioned. In its reestablishment, to what extent is it going to be much better than it was before, much larger? For example, would it have the potential to serve other OECS countries and to provide training for other OECS officers as well? And my last question, the task force between St. Kitts and Nevis, what's the status on that now? I think you had a meeting with Premier Brantley fairly recently. Right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. But there are a number of things you asked, and I think the Minister of Tourism, Civil Aviation, and Ports would be able to answer that question with respect to the airport and to the USVI matter. So I'll turn it over to her, the Honorable Masha.
Thank you, Prime Minister. As it relates to the work on the apron, I received a report from the Board of Directors from their last meeting, I think about a week ago, where the board agreed that the project for the repair to the apron should be put out for a tender. The chairman is leading that initiative, and I am not sure if it's out as yet, but that was the decision taken by the board. The decision related to temporary repair to the apron as opposed to permanently fixing that part of the apron. And that was based on the fact that there is going to be some work being conducted at the airport on the terminals. We are in some discussions at SCASPA for permanent work, not just on the apron, but on the terminals. The work is going to be temporary because we want to be ready, as you said, for the winter season that starts in November. It is going to be sufficient to accommodate the aircrafts that we anticipate, and that would be the usual legacy carriers, the British Airways, American, United. The temporary repairs to the apron would be sufficient, and we should be able to complete the work by then. We don't foresee any issues with the FAA, as you questioned. there are some we are actually accommodating on the other end of the apron. If you see, some of the carriers are actually parking on that end, so we don't foresee any real issues. As it relates to expansion of routes into, I think you asked the BVI and USVI, forgive me, USVI, we are in discussions with some of our existing carriers, particularly Caribbean Airlines, who they're scheduled to start service here, as well as Inter-Caribbean. The issue relates to, I don't know if you were following when we went to Parliament late last year, when we, as a region, we were, I think, demoted to Category 2 based on the non-compliance of some of the member states. And so we have, once you're in Category 2, there's an issue as it relates to aviation for carriers out of the US. And so as a region, we're working on that through the regional body ECHO, that's the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Association, to make sure that all of the member states can be brought back up to Category 1. And that involves harmonizing of the legislation that we would have passed in our parliament late last year. So once all of the member states can comply, then that should deal with the issue in relation to US carriers. And because, as you said, the United States Virgin Islands would fall under Transport and Security Association, TSA, we have to make sure that as a region we can comply before we can have flights coming from some of those islands. So we're working on that as a region.
All right, thank you very much, Minister. With respect to the Canine unit, we will start the training here. And of course, when we open the training center, that will have, we'll, of course, give access to our regional brothers and sisters. And so, but in the first instance is to make sure that we can cover St. Kitts and Nevis from the customs end and from within the police service. With respect to, there was another question that was asked. Yeah, the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis and the task force that we are speaking of. The AG is also involved, as that would be a legal matter. We continue to pursue that. I am supposed to, we'll be making another visit to Nevis as well. And so we will update that as we go along, Bat, and we formulate exactly the areas which we are going to touch. But I would like to say that when it comes to the relations between St. Kitts and Nevis, there is, of course, much better collaboration. As a result of that, we are able to move forward with the geothermal project, for example. That project has been resonating regionally and internationally. There are a number of initiatives that we'll be able to undertake in closer collaboration. For example, in healthcare, for example, in dealing with the security matters and the openness of the administration with respect to the defense force and so forth. Those things are really moving along. So I would say that we are moving along steadily in terms of the relations with St. Kitts and Nevis. And this is being finalized, Mr. Bat, so that we can undertake a lot of the critical work to be done, especially when it comes to the Constitution. So we will update accordingly when it comes to that. I would say at this time that that would be the final question. I think that the media houses would have had the opportunity to ask. As usual, I would want to give the opportunity to each minister, each member of cabinet to update the country as to the significant things that are happening within their ministry, so that we are all abreast and we stick to our policy of openness, transparency, and good governance. And in no particular order, maybe I can start from the end, come up. And at the end, we have the Honorable Joya Clark, Minister of Sustainable Development, et al. And Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and good day to everyone. I'll be updating on climate action, constituency empowerment, and sustainable development, as well as the Ministry of Environment. Recently, I was challenged by a colleague to speak to climate change in a way that resonates with everyone. Naturally, as an advocate, you would think, well, why wouldn't everyone understand the importance of climate change and responding to it or participating in meetings? And I said, let's take on this challenge. So the Ministry of Environment, Climate Action, and Constituency Empowerment will be leading an education campaign entitled Climate as a Bread and Butter Issue. And I reference last month, June, the world experienced its warmest June on record. According to reports from Al Jazeera Newsline and from some scientific reports, it has possibly been the warmest June in 100,000 years. July 3rd, and some of you would note, if you can remember, it was also recorded as the hottest day ever recorded globally, according to data from the US National Centers for Environmental Prediction. Now, I share all of this note on temperature because there's a need for us to appreciate the dire situation as it relates to climate, food, and most importantly, water in St. Kitts and Nevis. Hotter temperatures enhance evaporation, which reduces surface water from our soil and our vegetation, our lakes, our underground water supplies. I share this to extend the support to the Ministry of Water, as the Ministry of Climate Action constantly does, to indicate that one of the first ways that we feel the climate crisis in St. Kitts and Nevis is the water situation that we're experiencing. And it will get worse. And we do appreciate the civil engineering, the work that has to be done to ensure we can access water. But we must appreciate that unless we change, we will not have more water. But the climate crisis is manageable if we continue supporting the work of our Minister of Water and their entire department as they push for more water for our people. We are fighting the climate. Now, as it relates to No Plastic Bag Mondays, the Cabinet recently approved the request by the Ministry of Environment and Climate Action and Constituency Empowerment to extend the No Plastic Bag Mondays campaign. This campaign is a partnership with supermarkets and vendors across the Federation. We recognize the importance of banning single-use plastics, and I've mentioned before that the ban on the importation of single-use plastic bags has been approved. However, the timeline will be based on the continued negotiations with our stakeholders. However, today I am happy again to state that to all stakeholders, and allow me please to identify our supermarkets, our shops, stores, street vendors, persons who sell in the market, fruit vendors, food stalls, and importantly, to all patrons of such establishments, that the Cabinet of St. Kitts and Nevis, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Cabinet, has approved and is supporting the ministry's No Plastic Bag Mondays indefinitely. Every Monday going forward, we encourage all of us not to ask supermarkets and food vendors for plastic bags, not to look for them, but to walk with your reusable bags to all of these establishments. It's not just the supermarkets, it's everywhere, the agro strip, the market, when you're buying everywhere, no plastic bags, because very soon we will not be importing single-use plastic items and styrofoam. So we welcome your support. As it relates to the Ministry of Sustainable Development, kindly allow me to make a brief statement on behalf of the ministry as it relates to land payments. The Ministry of Sustainable Development has as its core objective a land initiative, land allocation, normalization, and distribution. This initiative commenced with a land fair in February 2023. The Ministry of Sustainable Development remains committed to this mandate of empowerment of citizens through land ownership and through its updated land initiative, which has sought to document, assess, and restructure the process of land allocation and land use in St. Kitts. Resumption of payments on land. The Ministry of Sustainable Development is pleased to announce the resumption of payments for persons in the following years. All persons allocated land up to December 2020 can resume payments at the Treasury. I repeat, all persons allocated land up to December 2020 can resume payments at the Treasury. All persons who were allocated land in 2021 are kindly advised to submit their survey documents and to confirm their payment status with the Ministry of Sustainable Development before proceeding to the Treasury. For persons who were allocated lands in 2022, the Ministry is kindly asking for a bit more patience as we finalize the major challenges associated with land distribution during that year, including double and triple allocations and allocations to lots which do not exist. The Ministry looks forward to the resumption of land allocation in August 2023, whereby an announcement on the improvements and changes of that process will be made by the Honorable Prime Minister. Land payments resume as of today, July 13th, 2023. Thank you very much.
Resume. Good news.
Okay, so as it relates to tourism, the destination, we really operate on a seasonal basis. So most of our visitors tend to come during the winter season, which usually starts in November. And when cruise tourism it starts in October up until April. The hope is that we can convert the destination to a year-round destination as opposed to being seasonal. So during this time, just before October and November comes the season and the winter season and the beginning of the cruise season, within the ministry, we are updating our policies and working with our stakeholders to make sure that when the season starts, we are efficient. So we have a schedule for consultations. We had the Department for Policy and Research who were working. They have revised some of the policies. We're currently at the stage where we are consulting our stakeholders. So far, we've met with Inland Revenue and the Ministry of Finance. We've met with Agriculture as it relates to our primate petting vendors and how they operate at our ports and our different prescribed spaces. So we've met with Agriculture and even the St. Kitts Biomedical Association in terms of how we can partner in the industry. We've met with Inland Revenue in terms of how we're doing with registration and issuing of licenses. We're hoping that consultations, and we're going to be meeting with our taxi and tour operators next week. We've met with our presidents of the associations, and they're all a part of the process. So we don't believe in just making changes. We believe everybody should be a part of the process, and that is where we are right now within the ministry at the conclusion of the consultations, and we're hoping that can be done by early August. Then we would go into our training with our stakeholders, and that should take us up until the end. So stay tuned. Those of you who've applied, we have a number of questions and queries coming about licenses being issued to our beach vendors or taxi and tour operators. Once the training is completed, the consultation is completed, we're going to go into training, which is compulsory. absolutely compulsory before you can be issued with a license. We invite you to come to the sessions. Next week, we're going to be at the Marriott with a number of our stakeholders. If you want to be a part of the whole process, make sure you show up. You can contribute to the policies going forward as it relates to the industry. Once the training is completed at the end of August, then we would start to make sure that, licenses are issued. We're working with Inland Revenue and the Ministry of Finance and even the licensing authority for those who would be required to have particular licenses from there. So stay tuned in terms of what's happening at this time within the ministry. We continue our efforts to work with our regional partners, our cruise partners, and our carriers as well to make sure that our facilities are updated. So we're using this time to make our improvements down at UDC and at the ports, at the air and seaports to make sure that we can accommodate and be ready for the upcoming season. We are also working on our strategy to make sure that ultimately we can make the destination a year-round destination so that it's no longer seasonal. And of course, that is a long-term goal. As it relates to, even in Frigate Bay, we're using, and Frigate Bay, the Frigate Med Development Corporation falls under the ministry, and there are a number of projects that are outstanding. That is the beach renourishment project, both in Friars Bay and in Frigate Bay. Those projects as well, we strategically wanted to complete them during the off-season, which is between May and October. I know that they're working feverishly in Frigate Bay and in Friars Bay to have those projects completed as well for the upcoming season. In Frigate Bay, we had an issue with the waste system in terms of where we direct the waste for the bars and even, otherwise. And we came up with a solution. Those projects should be completed, hopefully, in time for the cruise season so that it doesn't affect the overall visitor experience. As it relates to labor and employment, as the Prime Minister would have indicated earlier, we are in the final stages of the minimum discussions as it relates to the minimum wage, and we should be having something on that shortly. Some of the officers just returned from the ILO, that's the International Labour Organization conference in Geneva, and we were able to meet with the Director General as a block with our other Caribbean counterparts as it relates to the Caribbean's agenda in labor, as we work towards a decent work agenda for our people regionally and here in St. Kitts and Nevis as well. We are moving to ratify some of the outstanding conventions. It means that we need to start our consultations as well with the Attorney General's chambers and the relevant stakeholders. I met with the tripartite committee as the Minister of Labour and Employment. We had our first meeting, I think, earlier this year. And I think it was because the minimum wage took priority. We believe that that needed to be treated as an issue of priority. The tripartite committee hasn't met since, but I'm told by the permanent secretary that we're scheduled to meet shortly to advance the work as it relates to the overall agenda of reviewing our laws here as it relates to labor and labor relations. And so I think that is it by way of update. We concluded the music festival. We are still waiting on the exit report from the different subcommittees. I'm told that most of the committees would have submitted their respective reports, and we're now trying to put the final exit report together. We meet for a retreat next Wednesday with all of the persons who were involved and even other stakeholders as it relates to the music festival. So we should have some word on that, perhaps maybe when we meet again with the press. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maynard.
Yes, thank you. I will use this opportunity to present a statement on the VNR presentation at the 2023 High-Level Political Forum at the UN headquarters in New York. VNR is the Voluntary National Review as we pursue our SDG goals. In our effort to fulfill this administration's vision of becoming a sustainable island state, especially as it relates to water, energy, food, infrastructure, technology, and industry. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis will present its first voluntary national review, VNR, to the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, HLPF, in New York on July 18th, 2023. St. Kitts and Nevis will be one of 39 nations presenting at this particular HLPF at the UN headquarters in New York. The presentation of the VNR is the primary space where the UN monitors the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development at the global level. The voluntary national review is a process through which countries assess and present national progress made in implementing the 2030 Agenda, including achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the pledge to leave no one behind. It also focuses on eradicating poverty in all its forms and dimensions. The Federation's first voluntary national review comes as a result of many months of national consultations, spearheaded by the Ministry of Sustainable Development under the leadership of the Minister of Sustainable Development, Honorable Dr. Joy L. Clark. The process has been diverse, involving stakeholders from civil society, the private sector, youth groups, and the public service, including the Nevis Island Administration. We say a special thank you to the UN Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, and the UN Multi-Country Office for Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean for their indispensable support in making our first VNR a reality. During this year's high-level political forum, the theme will be accelerating the recovery from COVID-19 and the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development at all levels. There will be a special focus on SDG 6, which is clean water and sanitation, 7, affordable and clean energy, 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, 11, sustainable cities and communities, and 17, partnerships for the goals, all of which are critical if we are to realize our country's sustainable island state agenda. The delegation to present the VNR will include Head of Delegation, yours truly, as Minister of Energy et al., Mrs. Sherrilita Dorr Tyson, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Mr. Oren Manners, Director of the Public Sector Investment Program, Mr. Kevin Hope, VNR Consultant, Ms. Donala Laplace, Communications and Research Officer in the Ministry of Environment and Climate Action, and Ms. Nikira Nichols, the Federation's representative on the UN Youth Advisory Group. Following the VNR presentation next Tuesday at 10 a.m., the Ministry of Sustainable Development and members of the delegation will continue its communication campaign to further sensitize the public on our SDG progress and our commitment to leave no one behind. I believe that you will see a sneak peek video today or right now. So I want to invite you to view this 1-minute video in the lead up to the HLPF.
St. Kitts and Nevis has made significant strides in implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Our development initiatives over the past 2 decades have targeted accelerating economic growth with a focus on employment, resulting in a fall in the levels of poverty, improved social services, and expanded social protection for poor and vulnerable households. However, the pandemic caused massive disruption to people's lives and affected the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in areas such as poverty reduction, good health care, quality education, decent work, and economic growth. St. Kitts and Nevis's new National Development Planning Framework, which guides the country's development planning for the next 15 years, is well aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and the government's vision for the country to become a sustainable island state.
Needless to say, we are very excited about this opportunity to showcase to the world and to the UN body our progress thus far. And as I wrap finally for my intervention here, I would like to update the nation very briefly that the Ministry of Post, which is the General Post Office, is now well on the way with our national addressing system. We made a commitment that I think it was in our campaign, that you will no longer have to tell someone that you live by the mango tree around the corner with the breadfruit tree hanging over into the yard on the left side. And we are now well on our way to standardizing how your address would look. Over the coming weeks, the post office will be engaged with the Department of Physical Planning, and in particular the GIS office, to formalize the policy going forward on how your address would look. To get a sneak peek, it's going to be something like this. If you live on a street called, Jeffrey, your street has a name? Ivy Batty's. So let us say he lives on Ivy Batty's Street. Oh, sorry. You live on Ivy Batty Street.
Number 141.
Good. So he will become 141 Ivy Batty Street. What is the community called? Ponds Extension will be the community. Your settlement will be Bastille. And then you will have a postal code that everyone will learn eventually, your postal code. Most likely it will have the form of KN 170, let's say 1. So you will know what your postal code is. The first number in that code, KN1, indicates that that is in St. Kitts. KN2 will indicate that it is in Nevis, and so on. So over the coming weeks and months, we are embarking on the national addressing system. And I want to say at this moment that I am very pleased with the progress that the GIS office has made over the past couple of months. They have done a significant amount of work. And the next phase is for us to engage in the street naming process. There will be a policy that will be set out on how the street naming will be done so that it is effective, efficient, and that there can be or there will be community involvement once the proposals are made. So look forward to our national addressing system rollout, where we can finish with this breadfruit tree across the road.
Thank you very much, Minister. Over to the AG.
Yes. I'd like to update the nation on some activities taking place at the Attorney General's office, as well as the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs. We're trying to deal with various issues by way of legislative reform. One of the matters that we are currently resolving is to deal with the issue of fake marriages. We are finalizing new marriage verification regulations very shortly under the Citizenship Act. Marriage verification officers will be assigned to interview and monitor applicants to determine whether a marriage is valid and persons aren't getting married simply for the purpose of citizenship, which is a breach of our Citizenship Act. We discovered a widespread black market industry where citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis were being paid as low as $850 and as much as $10,000 to marry non-nationals, who then obtained their citizenship the next day. One person said when he asked to kiss his new wife, the mastermind of that fake marriage said, "No, you cannot." That fraudulent fake marriage pay for citizenship scheme, which started in 2019, has now come to an end. In respect of traffic illegalities and recklessness, we are currently working on an amendment to the Traffic Act to introduce a demerit point system so that persons who are reckless on the road can lose their licenses after gaining a certain amount of points. and cannot recover their licenses until they take defensive and safe driving courses. We're also reviewing the highway code to examine speed limits and introduce potential sleeping policemen, otherwise known as speed bumps. We are trying to deal with smuggling of persons into the Federation. We have created a standalone anti-smuggling bill and amendments to the Immigration Act and the Transnational Crimes Act to address the issue, which is becoming heightened and more frequent national security matter. We're also finalizing for discussion a community beautification and safety bill that will seek to ensure that all abandoned lots and homes are cleansed and cleaned. Many abandoned lots and homes are used to hide firearms, bulletproof vests, and other items used in crime. Also, they cause health hazards for neighbors by being breeding grounds for mosquitoes and rats. The cleansing and cleaning of these abandoned homes and lots will be performed by private small businesses, and the cost will be attached to the landholder's property tax. The landholders will get sufficient notice to cleanse and clean, and before any action is taken. And for long-standing abandoned properties, if the landowner repeatedly does not take action to cleanse and clean their lots, then the state can potentially acquire those lots to repurpose for housing for persons, particularly in constituencies where there's little land available. We're also working on the Criminal Procedure Bill and amendments to the Jury Bill to speed up and strengthen the criminal justice system. Accused persons and victims simply wait too long for their cases to be heard. We are addressing this as a high priority for the AG's office, and I promise that within the next year there will be swifter justice in St. Kitts and Nevis. Such swift justice will allow our community mediation and restorative justice measures through the Access to Justice Bureau to be more impactful and bear fruit in changing our culture of aggression and dispute resolution through violence. We are currently, in relation to what the Prime Minister said earlier in terms of negotiations and discussions and relationships with Nevis. I recently, in early June, attended a constitutional reform conference with some of the top political and legal intellectuals in the Caribbean, including members of constituency reform committees from Belize and Barbados and other Commonwealth Caribbean territories. And I am of the firm view, and we are currently drafting for review by Cabinet, a constitutional reform and civic education committee bill, which will establish a permanent committee comprised of members of various stakeholders in our society. The CRCE committee, if accepted, will report to Parliament every few months with important constitutional reform, every few years with important constitutional reform recommendations, and it will permanently be tasked with educating the population about our Constitution and civic matters so that we improve civic-mindedness and constitutional knowledge in our society. We are also in the early stages of setting up the Constituency Boundaries Committee and starting an electoral reform process, which would receive widespread input from all stakeholders in our society to be completed well in advance of the next scheduled general election. In terms of a couple infrastructure projects from the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs, I want the public to know that the civil and criminal high courts will move from September 2023 to Fort Lands by the Cenotaph, and they will operate there for the near future while we find a permanent solution to the Sir Lee Elmore Judicial and Legal Services Complex. Also, we are in the embryonic stages of discussing with the parliamentary officials a potential new home for Parliament. Some monies have already been allocated in this budget, and we are about to start that process of potentially finding a location and getting a design resolved so that we can start that process and hopefully we can have a brand new home for Parliament in the near future.
Thank you very much, AG, for your update. I'll now turn it over to Foreign Minister Tal. Talk to the Honorable.
Thank you again, Prime Minister. Let me indicate that the ministries I have, or the ministry I have, which is what should I say? Multi-departmental.
It's huge. Widespread.
Very widespread indeed. Foreign affairs, international trade and industry and commerce and consumer affairs and economic development and investment. Well, with regard to foreign affairs, some of the matters pertaining to foreign affairs I've already mentioned earlier this morning when I was asked to answer one or two questions. But I want to say generally that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is still determined to pursue its policy of basically consolidating the relationship that it has with existing countries and institutions, and at the same time expanding that footprint that we already have. In that regard, I would want firstly to mention, as the Prime Minister did announce some time ago in the Parliament, that we have improved our relationship with Canada. Canada, as you would remember, back in 2014, had followed on with the U.S. Advisory in St. Kitts and Nevis, and did suspend the visa-free agreement and arrangement that we would have had for several years. That has now been reinstated. That is the visa waiver agreement that we've had in terms of our people with a St. Kitts Nevis passport having to travel to the High Commission of Canada in Trinidad or in Barbados, wherever it is located, no longer have to do so, in the sense that we can pursue our entry by electronic means, and thus the prohibition of not being able to travel unless you went there to get the stamp visa, that is no more. And that has happened together with a few other OECS countries. I just want to again use this opportunity to thank the Prime Minister and commend him for the efforts that he has pursued vigorously as the leader of our country. But permit me at the same time, Prime Minister, to mention commendations to a few others who had been engaged in this exercise. And in that regard, I want to specifically mention the High Commissioner of St. Kitts and Nevis to Canada, Ms. Truss, who had done tremendous follow-up work that was required of her on the part of the government in pursuing this very, very important task. In this same vein, I would want to commend the High Commissioner before her. The High Commissioner before her was Ambassador Shirley Skerritt, who had left the Brussels OECS embassy and had established the new High Commission of St. Kitts and Nevis in Ottawa. You would remember that the OECS countries, of which St. Kitts was part, had closed its High Commission in Ottawa. And we, especially having been affected in the way that we were in 2014, took a decision to reopen and reestablish on our own the High Commission in Ottawa. This was pursued. Shirley Skerritt was the first, and we want to commend her. But there were also two foreign ministers who would have served before me to lead up to this. I want to commend Patrice Nisbet, who was very vigorous in getting that High Commission reopened so that the relationship with Canada could have been rebuilt, and successfully so, as it has, to lead to the removal of the restriction with regard to the waiver agreement. I want to also thank Foreign Minister Mark Brantley, who followed Nisbet when he was in the previous administration before ours, who pursued this particular matter. So this is a matter, I believe, that demonstrates a building and consolidation of the good relationship with Canada. And I want to commend Prime Minister Drew for taking us into that final stage of this matter. In this regard, I also want to say that St. Kitts and Nevis continues to participate actively with Canada. In fact, recently, when we went to Washington for the General Assembly of the OAS just a few weeks ago, Canada use the opportunity to engage all of the foreign ministers attending the General Assembly of the OAS. And again, we were able to develop, establish, and approve a roadmap that we will follow with Canada to build our relationship, and in particular, to lend continued support to the issue of Haiti. Don't forget that. Haiti is still one of those states within CARICOM that has been left out in terms of what is happening in that country with regard to law and order and poverty and people's basic livelihoods. Canada is leading very strongly on this matter. And where we are on this is that we want to hold new elections to replace the existing situation where we have an interim government. But unless there is appropriate law and order established in Haiti, we would not be able to do so. So what is being engaged? Canada at the moment, together with Jamaica and so forth, are engaged in training personnel so that the police would be able to take control again of Haiti from the vicious gangs that are there, and thus may be contributing to the prevention of Haitians taking the boats across the seas and arriving in countries like ours and others in the Caribbean, where there would be difficulties in having them properly looked after. So I want to emphasize that. Of course, generally we have said that we would want to progress St. Kitts and Nevis as a sustainable island state. That is what our foreign policy is in fact working towards. Establishing, consolidating the relationship with countries and international organizations so that we would be able to receive the necessary support and the collaboration to achieve St. Kitts and Nevis as a sustainable island state. We've heard from Clark, Minister Clark and Minister Conwys a moment ago. You've heard Dr. Drew, Prime Minister, earlier. This is what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs intends to do. Work with institutions, work with government, so that whatever there is for us to attain or to receive, to attain this lofty position of becoming a sustainable island state, that's what foreign affairs is all about. So we improve relations, and we do so not only with Canada and the United States, but we do so in Europe as well. Remember, we did not have any diplomatic relationship at all with Ireland. Would you believe that? The Republic of Ireland, which is separate and apart from the United Kingdom, never had established diplomatic relations with us. We've now done that. A few weeks ago, we were able, after pursuing it, we were able to have Ireland and us sign the necessary papers, letters, so that we are now diplomatically related to each other. We are now waiting. Of course, the Cabinet, Prime Minister will decide when we would either have an embassy established there in Ireland or whether we would have a non-resident ambassador and we would have a consulate established in Ireland. Why is Ireland important at this time? England has been, the UK has been, as you know, our lead partner in Europe. The UK is no longer a member of the European Union, although we have established very, very good relationship, nevertheless, with the United Kingdom. We need someone to be at the table at the EU to speak on our behalf, especially when there have been threats in the past of the EU reviewing our visa status with regard to traveling into Europe. So Ireland has become a very important partner and will be requested to lend the necessary support that is required of us or for us in order to consolidate our own relationship with European countries, especially in areas of interest for us here in our country. And then, of course, as I said, we want to make sure that we expand. And in expanding, we're looking now at the MENA area, that is the Middle East and North Africa. We already have an embassy in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, that is in Abu Dhabi. We used to have a consulate in Dubai. We are looking at how we would want to consolidate our presence, not only at the diplomatic level in the UAE, but also in terms of business, new business, especially given the portfolio of economic development and investment. How can we consolidate our presence also in Dubai, which is the center of economic and business activity in UAE? But we want to go beyond that, as I said, Middle East and North America, MENA, North Africa, sorry. And that is our presence already in Morocco. As you know, former Commissioner of Police, Creely, His Excellency, he is our ambassador for the OECS in Morocco, North Africa. We want to expand our footprint within that area. And so we will be exploring as a nation how we can improve our relationship with other countries in North Africa so that we will consolidate our position in that area, especially for the opportunities for investment. Speaking of that, Saudi Arabia, Qatar are two of the countries that we will be targeting because we know there's an intense competition between UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. And we are going to see how we can get involved while this activity of competition is ongoing and see how we can establish firm relationship in these two other countries. And so a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to Saudi Arabia for the first time, identified what would be the possibilities of establishing a presence there, whether an embassy or through a consulate, honorary consulate or otherwise. And this is going to be pursued vigorously over the next few weeks. I think that's enough, of course, for foreign affairs. In terms of economic development, I mentioned as well earlier what we're doing with regard to resuscitating the developments at Christopher Harbor and also down in the Whitegate area, specifically at Kitchen Hill. Those will continue aggressively. And we are bringing into the country from time to time a number of persons who are having serious look and contemplation of restarting or investing to restart the developments which have been stalled there in those two areas. Finally, in terms of our international trade and industrial commerce and consumer affairs, I want to say that the matter of the CET that you would have heard earlier, that is one of the important matters that is confronting the Ministry of Trade at this very moment. As you know, CARICOM produces a number of goods, and they make them available to the Caribbean community. The tariff that is placed on those goods usually relatively minimal and affordable. But of course, consumers have different tastes. So if you have a taste for a product that is made and circulated in CARICOM, but you wish to buy one that is made outside of CARICOM, you have to pay an increased tariff called the Common External Tariff. Common External Tariff, meaning that things are coming into the market, into the community from outside, and so it is taxed in a particular way to the CET. We have had a basket of goods for several years, and they were not in any way tariffed by the CET. In other words, we said, these goods are basic items. People need to live from them. Therefore, no matter where they come from, they should be allowed into the country. And if they are coming from overseas outside of the CARICOM region, they should not be applied with the CET. There have been serious objections to that from Trinidad, Jamaica, Dominica, Belize, because they are now saying, well, we can produce enough for you to get. So why do you want to get from outside? But if your people's taste is such that they have to buy goods that come out from outside of the region, then you have to pay the CET. And so the common external tariff has now been agreed to be applied because we have been threatened to be taken to the Caribbean Court of Justice, where we can be charged millions of dollars. We experienced that a few years ago, 2 years ago, with sugar, where sugar is being produced by Belize. Belize is saying I could produce enough sugar for the whole community. So if St. Kitts and Nevis, you want to buy sugar from Guatemala, and Guatemala is not part of CARICOM, well, pay more money for it. Put on the tax so that if the people in your country buy it, at least it is taxable and they pay more money for it for us to get some return. Belize said that. And eventually we had to settle. We settled recently again with Dominica, with Jamaica on issues of milk and one or two other items that are in the food basket. So we have taken as a government a position that we would allow the CET to be applied on the basket of goods, which are being produced in CARICOM and which CARICOM say is available on the market. You will find, therefore, that this would be only for a limited number of goods. It should not increase the cost of living for you, because for each item that the CET is applied, there is an alternative item that is produced in CARICOM. So if you want really to get the goods that are being produced by brand from outside, then you may have to pay what it used to cost plus the CET. I just wanted to explain that so that our people will understand exactly what is happening. I want to end by thanking those who have been very patient for the establishment of the Ministry of Economic Development and Investment. As you know, this is a ministry that has been created out of several ministries. We are now coming together. We don't have a place of existence as yet. We are getting our headquarters or our offices ready. I want to thank the staff so far for their patience, and to thank the staff in the other ministries, permanent secretaries, directors, heads of departments, and support staff for your tremendous work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now pass it over to our Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Education, Ital.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. Pleasant good afternoon. As way of update, we have just completed all of our graduations. It was quite an energetic exercise. I'm happy to report that maybe this is one of the very first summers in a long time that constructions or renovations have started in a number of our schools, and there are 5 approved CDMA projects that we are waiting the funding for them to start during the summer vacation. So we are doing some work at our schools, painting, changing windows, upgrading our bathrooms, etc. The pre-service training for our prospective teachers, that was just concluded, and the energy of our perspectives seems very high, and I'm looking forward to the final results of the pool that we will have. Scholarships continue to be available in Taiwan, Cuba, and Morocco. I must say that we had an increase in scholarships for Cuba specifically. And we are also building relationships with new universities who are coming on board, wanting to partner with CFBC. Most recently, we had interest of Southern University, but at the appropriate time, we'll share more detailed information. In the Ministry of Education, we are continuing to explore the bachelor's degree program specifically for our trained teachers. Quite a number of them, they want to pursue their bachelor's degree but prefer not to travel. And we have been in consultation with two specific universities who are working out something for that cohort of students. The AVEC CDB project, that is 6 classrooms building, it's completed, and I'm happy to hear that the handing over ceremony will be sometime very soon, might be next week. I'm also happy to report that one of those classrooms in that new building would be outfitted as our smart classroom. That will give our students the opportunity to be connected with any one of the universities that we would be partnering, so there wouldn't be a need for them to be traveling. The Basia High School, the tendering process was completed, and in a few weeks, the winner of the bid, the winner of the tender would be announced. And I'm also happy to report that as we forge ahead with the new Basia High School, our local professionals, they have been involved in the process thus far. There have been consultations with the school leadership as to exactly what they would like to see in their new school, also the design as well. And in quick time, another special announcement would be made. In early childhood, we have been outfitting our centers with the necessary teaching assistants that are needed, but more specifically, there was a gap with our resource teachers, and we were able to fill that, and we are providing traveling allowance to that. One of the problems or concerns that we have in early childhood is that the providers, especially in the nursery, they are given a vacation just once per year, that is in December, and there is a little bit of a burnt out. And I'm happy to report, although I'm waiting for the final report, that this year we are going to make a change in that, and those nursery providers will be given some relief in terms of extra vacation plus the December vacation. And Spanish should be taught from September in our preschools and our kindergartens and also our primary school. And the aim is to have some of our primary schools, specifically the Irish Town Primary School that has already been declared as our primary school of linguistics, where Spanish, French, and we are exploring the possibility, once all goes well with the teacher, for Mandarin. There's some new initiatives that we're looking forward to. Financial literacy and customer service will be offered as a certificate in our high schools. We are introducing the YOTC. This is our Youth Organization Training Corps, something similar to the ROTC in the US, where we are going to be channeling our students in some particular career path. So once they choose to be a part of this, they are going to be exposed to be working on the ambulance in terms of the EMT, police, soldier, coast guard, fire. And of course, you heard it from the Prime Minister. We are going to be reintroducing some of our disciplines through our clubs back in our schools. Scouts will definitely be on board. I am the Deputy Scout Commissioner, so I have a bias to that. Cadets for sure will be back, and I was told or being informed that we are going to be exploring a new cohort of cadets in terms of the C cadets. I'm excited about that. Photography will be taught in our schools of fashion designs, and I made mention some time ago that skills will be taught in our primary schools, and we are starting with plumbing, nail tech, culinary, which will cover baking and cooking, and we are looking forward to opening in our new school year our teacher supply shop. And of course, come September, the age will be happy to hear this. We are changing the HERE policy. I am awaiting the final report of the task force that was put in place to bring that together. But no longer would we be getting any potential letters for suing for a kindergarten boy wanting to being told that he has to cut his hair to attend school. Under housing, 24 homes remain under construction, of course, with all of our local contractors, the renderings and the floor plans and the 3D virtual walkthrough of the new housing revolution that was made available to the general public, and the feedback that we have been receiving, or I have been receiving, is that the houses look good. And I'm seeing the ambassador here with responsibility for advisor, that is, His Excellency, smiling. The East Coast development, that is well on its way. We had a delay, of course, because of the changes that we had to make after we had the house fair. We made some changes based on what the community was saying, and as a result, that would have caused some delay in shipping. But in quick order, we are going to be breaking grounds that will be showcasing the 2 model homes that will be there for us to display. I'm happy to report that there's a total roughly of 3,700 applicants that are on the online platform. This process is extremely important for us because we are capturing real data. And from this data, we will be better positioned to assist all levels of our people. There are those who are going to be going through the bank, and then there are others who would have other options available to them. I'm happy that the financial institutions are on board, and they are our big supporters in this. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our stakeholders. Some of them have gone beyond, and in a few weeks, they are also going to be announcing their own initiative to help with our housing revolution. I drove down East Street this morning, and the roof is off of the property that we are going to start over in East Street. That will be the new look of how we hope that East Street will be before 2026. So I'm happy again, Your Excellency, for the work that you and your team, the chairman at NHC, have been doing. Under human settlement, we continue to serve our people in the various ways we can, but I speak specifically of the pit latrines, the eradication, that is. And by the end of this year, Honorable PM, we are already positioned to complete 75, because it is the aim of this government by a particular time, I think it might be 2025, no one in St. Kitts should be using pit latrine. And I want to personally thank the Minister of Finance, who happens to be the Prime Minister, who gave a little injection in this initiative so that we can speed up the process as we continue to make lives better, or the livelihood of our people much better. I think I will stop here for now. Honorable PM, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister. Let me thank all of my colleagues in the Cabinet for their updates, the updates that they have just given to you, our people of St. Kitts and Nevis. As you can see, we are well positioned to really bring into reality the sustainable island state. It was a concept, and now we can really deliver it. We will resolve our water issue. We will resolve our energy issue. We would resolve the issues of food security, and therefore that would position us for all of the other industries that we are seeking, our sectors we are seeking to develop. So I want to thank them. They've been doing a tremendous amount of work. I think when people to sit down and reflect on what this administration would have done in a year, this would have been indeed an active year, and especially a year post-COVID, on the circumstances that are not ideal. Yet, we have been able to achieve such a scorecard. For my own ministries, very quickly, I want to say that the National Bank has done well, and the reports, of course, will be made available. I want to thank the chairman and the board, or the chairperson and the board, and the employees and the professionals at the National Bank who have worked so diligently to make sure that that bank continues to be extremely strong. And from all reports, we expect things to move in a positive way. And those who are the shareholders would be able to get a dividend. I also want to say to those at the Social Security, the chairperson for the board, the director, the members of the board, and all of the employees there and professionals, they have been working tirelessly hard as well for Social Security, who helped to deliver the dividend from the CBI. Social Security is going through a number of critical reforms, including upgrading its IT system and those other reforms from the actual report that are to come forward. I also want to say at the Development Bank, which was a significant challenge, that bank was really significantly hurt by bad policy over the previous 7 years under the last administration. We have been able to stabilize the bank. The bank is now able to meet a lot of its obligations and have increased its payment to the Social Security up to $250,000 per month. As you know, the bank was not keeping up with its obligations. And because of bad practice and not having audits done, a number of financial institutions were refusing to do business with our development bank. But we are back on track, and we are going to stabilize and strengthen that bank, for it's important for our national development. Of course, we have the 5% student loan, we have the small business loan, and so the bank is contributing to development as I speak. I want to say that we are now going to start in earnest the twice per month payment, salary payment, twice per month. And so it has started this month. So those of you who are paid, you might want to check your account and see that you that you have received your first, the first part of your payment this month. That, of course, is in keeping with best practice around the world. We are a bit behind, but this government administration, which is a progressive administration, it has now implemented it twice per month. So what that does, better budgeting, it helps you to pay down your loans much quicker because there will be more frequent payment. And so St. Kitts and Nevis is now among others who are paying salaries twice per month. So check your accounts so that you can be up to date with that. Commitment made, commitment kept. I want to also say that I'm very, very proud to report that in collaboration with the Republic of China, Taiwan, that we are moving to get our new smart hospital. And I want to, as a significant achievement that will benefit all of our people. I've already spoken on the national security end as well. But to say, and I want to report this, that economically, we have stabilized things significantly as we continue to recover. I want to say that we have stabilized things significantly. And so St. Kitts and Nevis, we continue to work to make sure that we are among the best, of course. And finally, I say to all of our people that you have to be a part, we encourage you to be a part of nation building. Any matter that we are dealing with as a country, we ask for your input, whether it be national security, the water issue, energy issue, education, health, whatever it may be, that you become an active part of it. We are on a path to achieve the sustainable island state. We can really do it. What does that mean? Cheaper energy, lower electricity costs. It means water 24/7. It means a nice hospital with upgraded services. It means better roads. It means more local, wholesome foods. These are some of the things that a sustainable island state means. It means better living. That is what we are really pushing towards. And to say to all who are listening, St. Kitts and Nevis is well on its way. Thank you very much to our citizens who have tuned in and choose to spend their time with us. Good day. God bless all of you.
Okay, sorry about that. All right. Thank you, Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers, for taking time out of your busy schedules to update the public on these major developments within our Federation and for maintaining your commitment of transparency and good governance. And thank you once again to the media houses for engaging with us and for also accepting the government's invitation to attend. To our viewing and listening audience, thank you once again for tuning in. Do have a blessed day.